presentation will be identifying all the areas of noncompliance, identifying areas of improvement, while also providing suggestions. The IEP we will be reviewing today is on a young male student. Some background information. The student's original special education date is 9/10/2018. He qualifies under ED, emotional disturbance. This IEP took place on 9/5/2019, which is pre-COVID. This is an annual IEP with an intent to go over the transitions. The first thing we noticed as a group was that the age and grade were incorrect. On the third page of the IEP, it states that the student just started his first year in high school. So this is how we knew it was incorrect. So the student's age is 14 and he's in the 9th grade. The next thing we saw was how it described how students' disability affects involvement in program in general curriculum. It states that the student presents with an emotional disturbance, which impacts his overall involvement and progress in general education. This needs to have more detail, we believe. Like, how does this emotional disturbance impact his involvement? How does it affect his progress? And are there certain activities that affect this overall?
All right, so this is our next page of the IEP, the present levels. Through the present levels, the first piece of it is the strengths, preferences, and interests. Through this portion, the case manager did a great job of showing that the student likes to draw and kind of what they like to do in their free time, the video games, even some reading and game development stuff. But really in this section, we should be including some more details, especially within their academic strengths or within their interaction with peers, adults in the classroom, maybe some of the academic sections that they seem to be performing higher in, and even what kind of learner, as we quoted here from one of the books, saying what learning strength does the learner have that can be emphasized in development of successful instructional formats. Too much attention often put on deficiencies. This isn't necessarily pointing out deficiency, but it is not in detail enough. The next section is the parent input. A lot of the times as a case manager, we give out surveys ahead of time that allow us to gather information on parent concerns. A lot of the times we can use the parent concerns that are provided to us ahead of time to make sure we cover those in the IEP. A lot of the times this parent input section should be regarding their current concerns. A lot of the times we use this section as C notes, so we can get into a little bit more detail as to what the parents' concerns are, and that way it's noted within the notes as well. Again, this could be a little bit more, if we do add it within the notes, this could be in a little bit more detail. It does talk about the students' transition between middle school and high school, and also the attendance of the student. Again, just being an outsider looking in and reading the IEP, one of the things that we struggled to figure out was we see that there is an attendance issue, we see it in the goals, but we really don't have much detail on it. So if this was, provided with some more structure and some more verbiage within the notes, it would give us a better overall picture to help as we jump in with the student. The next section here was last year's SBAC results. It does have the non-applicable boxes marked. Again, during this time during COVID, we did see where people were picking not applicable because students weren't taking this. But as we look at the date was 2019. Students should have taken it. The only reason we could come up with as to why the student wouldn't have taken the SBAC or as we weren't provided with scores would be to the parent consent or lack of consent to take the test or to take the SBAC. On the next page, we have our hearing and vision dates. Now, we did see that the last eval was the initial eval in 2018. There should have been some sort of results from that provided to us by the school nurse or through whoever was providing the assessment. So this should be marked whether it's pass or fail. And if there's notes marked as if the student wears glasses or whatnot, it should be marked within the other section. The next section is the pre-academic academic functional skills. Again, this is very, very vague. There is a verbiage in here that is very misleading or very generalized. As we look into this, he has solid reading and writing skills with no depth. They had not spoken on any depth. The case manager. A lot of the times we see raw data in here, diagnostic data, sometimes even added SBAC data, but we're not seeing that. So it's kind of hard to gauge what the students' pre-academic, academic, and functional skills are without that in-depth. As we continue to read, it seems that math seems to be a subject he struggles with a little more. Based on the Alex report, he has mastered whole numbers. He is midway with decimals. Not knowing what a midway mark is that at grade level, majority of students are introduced to their operations with decimals within sixth grade. So now we're the midway point, not too sure. It says at the end here, his weakest appears to be with fractions. So what type of fractions? Adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, mixed numbers, fractions with equivalent denominators, fractions with uneven or unlike denominators. A little more detail there would help guide anybody that's stepping in to be the new teacher here. Then we get into the communication development and the gross fine motor. Yes, this is similar to the verbiage that we've been told to use. Obviously, if the communication is not an issue at the time, we want to state that it's not impeding the learning of the student. But as we go to the gross fine motor, it talks about appears to be age appropriate and is not a concern at this time. Again, what are some examples to that? Has the student been successfully participating in gen ed PE? Are they able to use their pencil and not have any issues with their handwriting and whatnot? The next piece is the social emotional behavior. A big red flag is the date. I know a lot of times there's case carriers who work with service providers on the same IEP. And a big piece of adding those dates is saying that we are making a change, or that is what we plan on putting in there. That way the other service providers or case managers can see not only the old information, but what we plan to put in as the new information. Not too sure if those were not cleaned up as far as the date erased or why there's two pieces to each of those sections. Kind of catches me a little bit off guard as we look at the health. Those dates should not be in there. Under the social emotional behavior, looking forward into the IEP, we do see a goal. The goal was a social emotional goal. So there should be a little bit more detail in here explaining that and how that kind of ties in with one another, almost as if we're writing the baseline in this present level section. It does mention a non-problematic. What does that mean? What behaviors have seen in the past that we're not seeing now, kind of that sense. And then again, it speaks on the honors room. If I'm a new case manager that has never dealt with the honors room, what is the honors room? Why is the student earning the honors room, type of thing. As we look at the vocational section of the present levels, it talks that he's interested in possibly becoming an artist. There are other pieces of that we can add in the vocational setting, such as does the student properly use a Chromebook? Is the student able to turn their work in on time? Are they on task when a task is provided to them? Again, this is going back to the social emotional goal, as we saw that there were some issues there as well. In the health section, so there was the two pieces to the health section. The top, I'm assuming, is older information. The older information telling us, kind of explaining why the student is currently taking medications to help with schizophrenia, and that the student was hospitalized. Yes, do I think that can be some key information as to why the student is receiving medications? Do I think it needs to be in a section? No, I think we can go in some more detail within the notes. And then again, a little more detail within the new information saying that the student is currently still taking Abilify and Lexpro, and kind of the dosage for that, and if it's administered at school or just at home. This bottom portion here is usually where we discuss or where we mark where we're the sections where we're going to write goals. There are the two sections, the math calculation and social emotional behavior goals. Again, we will discuss this a little later on when we see that the student is out of the regular class for a larger percentage of the time, and that we should definitely be adding a little bit more to this section as well. Down here, just a little citation to go with the non-problematic behaviors.
Alrighty guys, so now we are here on the goals pages. One of the first things we noticed was that in the baseline, there was no numbers or percentages to influence the goal. So in the goal, we see percentages and numbers with at least 80% accuracy in 3 of 5 consecutive trials. But in the baseline, we don't see any sort of percentages in there to influence the goal. So the goal right here we found was a bit confusing. It didn't have something specific to give them, like a number chart or some sort of accommodation that could give more meaning to the goal. So the student will use a number chart with 80% accuracy in 3 out of 5 consecutive trials, something like that. We didn't get anything like that in the goal, and we do think that adding something like that in there would be beneficial. Also, in the baseline itself, it ends with that sentence that says, he has expressed that math is not his strongest subject. However, he has been putting forth effort in class. We didn't feel that that was relevant to include in the baseline, so we did chop that out right there. Also, we noticed that transition goal was checked in these boxes, and the transition goal was based off of him wanting to be an artist and pursuing his interest in art. And right here in this math goal, we don't see anything that really ties into that element, so we didn't feel that that box should be checked. Also, we were wondering why these progress reports were missing, where there should be 3 different reports influenced by the goal, gradually increasing with the percentage. We don't see anything like that, so we really don't know where the student's supposed to go with this progress, at what points he's supposed to make certain points of progress, so that definitely should be there. Right here we have where is goal number 2, because where is goal number 2? Alrighty guys, so this is the next goals page we're going to be looking at. The first thing that we're going to point out is where is unexcused absences in the baseline. So in the baseline, we don't see any mention of unexcused absences, but in the goal, it says not having more than 1 excused absence. We thought that that was not necessarily something that should be included in the goal. Instead, there should be something based off of his participation and him engaging, not him just showing up to class. Furthermore, when we look at the baseline, we did put a quote there by Bateman and Yale that talked about the importance of teachers knowing what triggers their students and what barriers are holding their students back from certain things, which this baseline does mention uncomfortable situations that the student could be in. So that was a connection that we made right there. We also noticed that the transition goal box was checked again in this series of boxes where it is not directly applicable to his art aspirations, so we didn't feel that that was necessary to be checked off. Also, just like the other goal, we are missing the progress reports to show how the student should be making progress and at what pace. And lastly, on the bottom of this page, we see that, first of all, the dates are dated after the school year, which is something that was very curious to us, and we didn't think that that was something that was valid. And lastly, the 2 boxes were checked right there that says independent and group, and we didn't know why both of those were checked. To our understanding, we believe that just one of those should have been checked. And if both of those were to be checked, that they should have separate places.
So on this page, our first suggestion was to add, for the accommodation part, to give the student more choices, like such as a frequent break. We just felt like we could add more accommodations to give the student. The next thing that we suggested changing on this was there was a lack in specific math supports. We could add in here something as simple as a calculator, a multiplication chart, or simplified test directions. All those could be added in these specific supports for the student. And those are important because it helps the student when testing or in the classroom. The next thing we believe that should be added in here is under the school personnel. It says school personnel will receive professional development, workshop, training, consultation, coaching, mentoring by administrator and master teacher to develop skills and knowledge. In this particular line, it should legally have to say in collaboration with the general education teacher. The next thing we noticed was out of compliance is where's the service page? There is no service page provided anywhere in the IEP, which is important because the service page is going to tell us what is the student's counseling services. Does he have ESY? Are there transportation services? All of this will be added in the service page, which is important for the student. The next page, the next section to this page, it should be listed on the previous page from the support page. This gives examples of calculator, multiplication, science charts, and all that. All these supports should be listed because they are things that the student will need. They give important information such as math, science, seating arrangements, etc. This is just the next part of that previous, and nothing's marked. Everything was correct on that because the student is not an English language learner.
Okay, this next page is the offer of FAPE in the educational setting section. We saw that the education was not being supplied to the student within the school or within the district of residence. But as we got further down into this page, we see the percentage marks saying that he's 52% of the time the student is outside of the regular class and 48% of the time the student is in the regular class. Being outside of the regular class, meaning he's in a RSP or SDC setting. If the student is receiving that much time out of the general or out of the regular class, we should see some more goals that he's provided with, especially if it's outside of just math. If he's only going to math in an SDC setting, then a math goal would be appropriate. If he's going to other subjects, as it states in the bottom line here, that he's receiving SAI services due to student's disability, he will receive SAI services for math, science, and English. Definitely some ELA goals if he's still receiving SAI services, making sure that we're keeping him on progression.
Okay, so our next section is going to be our special factors. And this basically just goes through and asks important questions requiring if the student requires assistive technology. No, he doesn't. Does the student require low incident services, equipment, or materials? No, he doesn't. So you don't have to worry about that. And then moving down, does the student need primary language support? We know that he's not an English learner. So no, he does not. In the comment section, does the student's behavior impede learning of self or others? This box is checked yes. And since the box is checked yes, the student should have a BIP attached to the IEP. And again, the highlighted portion at the bottom there, if yes, specify positive behavior intervention strategies and supports. The BIP will specify what types of supports is necessary when the student goes to a behavior. So there are specific things listed and what we're legally supposed to be doing and targeting when a student goes into a behavior, which, the parent can question whether, those needs were met in case a student kind of escalates to something more. So this will prevent the due process that we talk about if teachers or staff members are actually abiding by what's listed inside of the BIP. And lastly, if there's a BIP written, there should also be a behavior goal that matches that. And we see a social emotional goal. However, we should have a behavior goal as well. In this section, this is going to be your transition plan. And inside of the transition plan, there's 3 different sections that you review with the student, and one targets post-secondary education. There's one that targets employment, post-secondary employment. And then there's also one that involves their living arrangements once they graduate from high school. Typically, you can choose whether the student's present at the meeting, and then you kind of go through it with them present. It can be an interview prior to the meeting, and then you kind of record what the answers were. You can do interest inventories or surveys, and then you can transcribe that information there, or a questionnaire. And so if we go through this first section, upon completion of school, I will go to college and study art. It's specialized academic instruction because it is given by the teacher, and activity support. His post-secondary goal will participate in college awareness at the high school that he's at. He will research requirements and other information regarding potential colleges and universities that he would like to attend after high school, and related services as appropriate, which is college awareness. And it also says in the highlighted area of box 1 that it's linked to annual goal 1 through 3. The math goal or the social emotional goal doesn't really relate to him going to college and studying art. So technically he should have a transition goal that's going to go through, either giving him service interest surveys, or researching these colleges or universities and their requirements in order to get in, and then kind of putting that in his transition portfolio to build over the years. In the second box, it says, upon completion of school, I will work as an artist. And again, it has some supports that the teacher will offer, but it's also linked to the annual goal 1 through 3. And in this section, working as an artist and the goal being math fractions, specifically doesn't really correlate with working as an artist. So the fact that it's linked to goal 1 through 3 is unnecessary. And again, there should be a transition goal for that. And then upon completion of school, I will, it could say something like live with my parents, or I would like to live on my own in an apartment. And some of services to support that would be creating a budget, looking at the area that they want to live in, and or visiting some apartment buildings and getting pamphlets to see what they offer, and different things like that. If it were to, I want to say, living at home, then we talk about creating a monthly budget, how to contribute to the household, whether it's groceries, rent, paying for utility bill, different things like that. This is going to be page 2 of that transition plan. And it basically just goes over the course of study. And so typically, yes, we know that he's a freshman and they just got him 2 weeks into the school year. However, there should be a list of how many credits that the student needs in order to graduate at the end of the year. So let's say the district requires 220 credits. It should be broken down by, semester 1, semester 2, those courses that he's going to be taking in that school year. And just so that you can paint a clear picture for the student and the parent on what needs to be done. It is on a diploma track, so the credits are important. It's not a certificate of completion. At the bottom here with the highlighted section, it's marked yes. And is there an appropriate measurable post-secondary goal that covers education or training, employment as need, independent living? It's marked yes, but we don't have a transition goal that actually stipulates that. The transition is the goal that they linked it to is the math and social emotional. So these boxes should all be checked no for the post-secondary goals.
So these are the old IEP notes. Initially, we were trying to figure out why these were added to it. The old notes should not be added to the IEP. I know it says the IEP date is up here, but there was certain information throughout the notes that implied that these were the older notes. At one point, it talked about five goals that they had provided, and then it talks about a transition between looking forward to a transition between middle school and high school. So that kind of aspect of made us to believe that these were the old notes. Click one more time for me. Okay, so the new notes, as we read through these notes, it goes hand in hand pretty much with the IEP. It does mention on this that there is the ESY was discussed. He is eligible for ESY. ESY will be June 17th through July 12th. We do see what we think is the service box for this, or a service box for ESY, attached to two of the different pages. But there should still be an ESY eligibility sheet that explains that the student is eligible, and another sheet that says why the student is eligible for ESY. This is just a continuation of it. Again, I think this page and the previous page are out of order. Does speak on the no academic testing for this school year. Again, this was pre-COVID, so I'm not too sure if this is a school site where they don't participate. It says it's the school site was not within the district of residence, so I'm not too sure if this is like an NPS setting or if this is an alternative setting that the student's at where they're able to waive the testing or don't, or the parent was able to provide consent for the student not to participate within this. The final page was a signature page. Parent involvement is marked. Signature at the bottom for the Medi-Cal is signed, and all participation members are signed here with the parental safeguards provided. And then this last page being the excusal form for the PE. If you look at the note, it says in part. It does say that the PE teacher does give a short input, so I'm assuming PE teacher was there for the first portion of the meeting and then left. But everything is signed here, parent and assistant principal of student services, with a sign-in date there as well. Last one is the invite. The thing we look at on the invite is are the dates. So today's date as when the invite was sent out, when it was received back by the school district, and then both of these dates meeting before the IEP date of 9/5